Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moments podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Darren Collison with me. Darren is a UCLA basketball star, a former NBA star, and now he's an entrepreneur running his own basketball coaching provision business. And so super excited to highlight Darren's story and all the pivotal moments that have led to where he's at today. So Darren, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Phil. Appreciate it.
You betcha. So to start your story, let's talk a little bit about your parents, because your parents were athletes in their own right. Maybe not basketball stars, but track stars. So talk a little bit about growing up in a household where athletics were important.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how big they were, you know what I mean, until I would go to the track meets and they're pretty much well known, in the track, sport industry or whatever. And I think, I saw a lot of things in preparation that my mom did early on and my dad the same way. And they kind of instilled that work ethic into me, so I got a chance to see what it's like to be a professional athlete at an early age.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your mom competed in the Olympics, so that's not, for the faint of heart. That takes a lot of effort and discipline to be able to get there, and maybe subconsciously start even
For
picking
sure.
up on that.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I mean? I think it's important for young athletes to kind of envision or see, another athlete kind of walk the ropes of their own way and kind of, you know, become a blueprint,
Yeah.
for that, whatever sport they're trying to do. I think sometimes when you're young players, you don't get a chance to see other athletes do what they do, you know what I mean? Or at a high level, or you never get a chance to see what they do, behind the scenes. But, when you're a young athlete, you get the chance to see a player work out behind the scenes and see how hard he goes into the drills and, how you take care of his body and things that he eats, it definitely resonates with you pretty well.
Absolutely. Now, growing up and playing basketball, your mom used to drive you to LA to get to compete. So, talk a little bit about the different styles of basketball, maybe what you were surrounded with, and then when you got to LA and seeing that different style.
Yeah, so I'm from Inland Empire, and that's probably a good 45 minutes to an hour from LA. And they wasn't really high level basketball at the time, when I was
Yeah.
younger, coming up in the Inland Empire. And majority of the competition that was high level was in LA, in the city. And
Mhm.
my mom, she would have to drive me down because that's where, my travel ball team was playing at the time. And she would pretty much have to drive me down every weekend to kind of go hoop with some of the kids from the inner city.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you heard of Brandon Jennings and
Absolutely.
Russ, James Harden, all those guys, we kind of been playing against each other since we were younger, but they're from the city. They're from the inner city. And
Yeah.
I happen to be on the outskirts and even, from the inland. So
Yeah.
for me to even be a part of that and to compete against them meant a lot for my development.
Absolutely. So as you're developing and you're growing, you get to high school, and I'd love to say that Darren's story is a lot like LeBron James, where game one of high school, people just said, "Hey, best ever." But you started in your first few games actually playing on the JV team, and then at the end of the year,
Mhm.
transitioning into varsity. So talk a little bit about that and just that transition in year one, because that's a pretty big jump at that age.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but even before that, I wasn't even gonna make the freshman team.
Wow.
Like I I was not gonna make the team. I remember I was probably the second to last pick of trying to make the team, and my friends got me on the team.
Mm,
And when I was playing, I was barely playing. I was playing probably 2 minutes a game as a freshman. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
I just think the more and more we started practicing, the more and more we started playing. The JV coach was the one that took notice of me, Tim Lemus. He was the one that took notice of me. He was like, man, this kid doesn't need to be playing freshman. He needs to be playing JV. So just
Wow.
being on JV as a freshman meant a lot to me. Obviously, the goal is always to play for varsity, but
Yeah.
like I said, my background and how I came up, I was barely making a freshman team, and the JV coach took notice of me. So I was very appreciative of just being on the JV team. And then I happened to play varsity towards the end of my freshman year.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about that, because sometimes if you're the best, it's really easy to be bought into it and really easy to want to continue to own your craft. Sometimes, though, if you're not at the top, it's easier to say, maybe this isn't for me. Let's look for something else. So, what was it about basketball that really just kind of made you want to keep working at it and developing your skills and owning your craft?
Yeah, I mean, I was behind on the totem pole.
Hmm.
I was at the bottom of the totem pole, and I had to work my way up, and that was what drove me. That
Yeah.
competitive nature of trying to be the best, but no one even looked my way or looked my direction because I was a skinny, scrawny kid. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
that had no business of playing with some of the bigger kids. You know what I'm saying? And that was to me was a fun idea for me just to say, you know what, I'm gonna prove you guys wrong. I want to be one of the best, regardless of my size, regardless of my age. I'm gonna go out there and prove you wrong. So that competitive drive was the one that kind of steered me there.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about the transition then from freshman to senior year and just seeing the growth, because by the time senior year rolls around, you're a top 20 point guard in the country, top 100 player in the country. So just talk a little bit about the progression there and, maybe some important either people or things that happened that helped you get there.
Well, Dave Kleckner, my varsity high school coach, made a huge impact on me. He was very hard on me, as he
Yeah.
was with the other players, but he was extremely hard on me. And there's times where like I would come home, doubting myself because of how hard he went and some of the things that he was asking for me as a player.
Yeah.
And you know, I think I took on a challenge to kind of meet those requirements, and that's what kind of instilled that the skills, asset, and the competitive drive, and my accomplishment and my goals were reached because of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking about college at this point. I'm not thinking about being ranked. I'm thinking about being the best at my school. I'm still on JV. I made it to varsity towards the end of my freshman year. I haven't done anything in my eyes. So
Yeah.
sophomore year, there's still some guys that are better than me, and that didn't sit well with me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I wanted to be the best on my team at the time, and that was my focus. Junior year, I had a chance to be. I think it was me and David Carter. We were the top two best. Who was my best friend? Top two best players on the team, and I was cool with that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then senior year was pretty much the same thing. So for me, it was just trying to be the best on the team and just trying to lead the team to wherever state, CIF, whatever I can do. I just wanted to be the best on the team and lead them as leader.
Absolutely. So as you progressed and you did get better, you started getting attention nationally. So talk a little bit about the decision to go to UCLA. I mean, obviously there's the LA connection. So maybe they were, the dream school your entire life. But when you're getting recruited by UCLA, you're also getting recruited by many other schools. So talk a little bit about, what ended up being the deciding factor for you to want to go to UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, I first wanted to go to San Diego State because San Diego State was the only school that was recruiting me. I didn't have any big time offers other than San Diego State, and that they weren't even considered like one of the schools that people would choose right away.
Right. That's
At the
pre
time,
pre Kawhi Leonard, right?
pre Kawhi, pre yeah, like
Yeah.
they just wasn't the school that a lot of kids from that area would pick.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting a lot of offers, and I wasn't highly ranked as a player my senior year. So, I mean, for me, it was just like whoever took notice of me, I was just going to be appreciative of that and just run with it. And San Diego State been so good to me, and I went down to the campus. The campus was gorgeous. My parents went down with me, and when I came back home, I was just like, look, I want to go to San Diego State. That's what I told them.
Yeah.
And we happened to have a tournament, like I think it was like a couple of days after that, and we played in like some, like I think it was like a big time game in the tournament, and UCLA happened to be there, and I had one of my best games ever in high school, and I think that's when UCLA called my parents, and it was just like, look, like we want him to come down here, like check us out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when they kind of offered a scholarship, you know what I mean? Pretty much at the last minute, and so that's how my story ended up at UCLA.
Absolutely. So UCLA is a phenomenal program, and going in, you knew you were going to have to compete because they had a guy named Jordan Farmar there, and so you knew, hey, I'm going to have an opportunity to learn next to a great point guard, but I'm also going to have to compete for any minutes that I want. So talk a little bit about that freshman year and just the transition from high school to college and really getting ingrained there.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Farmar was probably the one guard that, was fun to watch, playing behind him because he was just so steady with the ball. I played against him in high school too, and he was so clever with the basketball. He was very crafty. He can shoot. You know what I mean? So to compete against him in practice, I think that did a lot for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And as he went on to the NBA, I kind of took some of the things that that he did that made an impact on me at the time. And, I'm now the leader of, of the team as a sophomore. And I kind of had to do the same things that Jordan did, if not, at an even higher level. You know what I mean? And, because I think at the time we had made it to Final Four
Yeah.
before he left. So everybody kind of expect us to kind of do the same thing. He had set the bar so high for us. So everybody
Right.
kind of expect us to do the same thing. And all those things was just trying to meet those obstacles, you know what I mean? And trying to
Yeah.
maneuver around them and just overcome them. And that was my goal.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about the competitive side of it because, I think it's always a tough transition where, I mean, you want to be the starter, right? We all have, if you are playing collegiate athletics, you've got that competitive nature where it's like, I want to be the starter, but at the same time, you were humble enough to realize, hey, I can learn from this person. And it didn't, I'm sure there were points where it did cause conflict, but from a standpoint of, hey, I'm competitive, but I'm humble enough to learn. Talk a little bit about that mindset for you.
Yeah, I think, it's okay to be the most competitive and still be the most humble. I
Yeah.
think, you have to respect your peers. You can't have this arrogant mindset that you think you know everything. And I don't think I ever had that. I may have at times, but for the most part, when, my coaches would say something to me or any of, my, coaches for that matter, it didn't matter if it was a head coach, assistant coach, voluntary coach, I'm all ears because I wanted to get better. Anything that can separate me from the competition and they see that any areas that I need to get better, I was willing to work on it. And so I
Yeah.
was willing to listen. So, I just took that, I ran with it, and I still competed at a high level. You know what I mean? And when it was time to learn, and I sat there and I learned.
Absolutely. Now, throughout your college career, you freshman year had Jordan Farmar that you were kind of learning from and pushing, and then you mentioned, hey, after he left, I kind of took that role and became the starting point guard, and I had people after me that were, really learning from me. So, talk a little bit about going from being the mentee to being the mentor, because in your time at UCLA, there's a bunch of phenomenal players. Aaron Swallow. I mean, a lot of guys that you got to play with and just talk about that dynamic for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your duty to give back to the younger players and whoever's coming up behind you for the tools that you learn yourself. I mean, I think it's kind of selfish if you learn some things and then any player coming behind you, you just say, I'm not gonna give you any type of suggestions. Whenever you leave somewhere, you want to make sure that that program is better. You know what I'm saying? And when you leave the game, you want a lot of the younger players to say a lot of good things about you and speak highly of you. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're helping them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do we have to help them? No, but it's just the right thing to do. If you want the game to become better, and I'm all for the game to be better. I think the younger players now are more skilled. They know more, you know what I'm saying? And they work a little bit smarter than how we work. And it's all because of the obstacles that we had to tell them how to maneuver.
Yep.
So, I mean, I just think it's just selfish if you don't do that.
Absolutely. So in your time at UCLA, I think you guys ended up getting 3 Final Fours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal. There's not a lot of people that can say in their 4-year college career that they get 3 Final Fours. So talk a little bit about just playing on the big time scale, right? I mean, every UCLA game is big, but the Final Four is even that much, more grandiose. So talk a bit about that and just maybe even the mental side of how you prep for that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you just taking it one game at a time. I don't think it's something like, oh yeah, everybody wants to win a championship, right? But
Yep.
it's not something you just think about every single time you go out there. I just think you're just trying to beat the opponent in front of you. And whatever your job is required of, that's what you're trying to focus on. You're just really just trying to focus at the job at test. So I think for me personally, I never looked ahead. It was always I
Yeah.
always stayed in the moment and that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to look in the past. I didn't want to look ahead. I just wanted to stay right there in the moment and trying to focus on winning games.
Absolutely. Now, just from a nostalgic standpoint, is there any games that stick out to you, either from a personal, how you played game, or as a team, just, a really exciting game that you were able to play in that stands out from your collegiate career?
I think the one that everybody sees, the Gonzaga game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was really special for how we pulled that off.
Absolutely. Now, as you're in college and you're progressing through, at what point did you start realizing, hey, the NBA is going to be an opportunity for me post college?
I think just the more and more we started winning, I think, obviously winning trumps everything. I think for me, the more and more we started to win, the more and more I started to get noticed to even play at that level. And obviously you're doing it at a big stage at UCLA. So to have that opportunity to play at UCLA and to win games, I think the NBA, scouts took notice of that, and they were like, okay, well, these are some of the things that he still has to work on if he wants to become, any somewhat of an NBA player. And I was willing to do that.
Absolutely. So for you, just think about, kind of the coaches in your life. I know you already referenced high school coach, but in college, what were some of the coaching lessons that you really took away that helped you as you transitioned to the NBA?
Defense, I think Ben Howland was big on defense, and he was just like, he made sure that 1 through 5, every player on that floor at any given second, minute, play defense. And if you didn't play defense, you weren't going to play.
Yeah.
And I took pride defensively. And, obviously it's tough, trying to stop somebody and score, 15 to 20 points, but we were able to do it.
Absolutely. So as your college career comes to an end, the NBA draft rolls around, and going into this draft, there's a lot of point guards that are in your same draft class. I mean, you already referenced Brandon Jennings, who had done kind of the uncharacteristic thing of going overseas instead of going to college and then coming back through, and you had the Ricky Rubios, the Johnny Flynn. So talk about kind of that draft combine process and the workouts and, figuring out, hey, where am I going to go in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I think I was projected like early second, late first, early second.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it had to do with all the point guards that we did have in our draft. But one thing that did help me is that all the point guards were being taken up real early in the draft. And obviously, the more point guards that keep getting taken up, I get to move up a slot. So I thought it was pretty special that, I think Johnny Flynn, Tyreke Evans, Ricky Rubio were like 3 out of the first 5 picks.
Yeah.
And then, I think Steph was the next point guard out of that group that came in early. And then Drew Holiday, he went to Philly. And then you had Ty Lawson and Jeff Teague. So like the more and more all these point guards started getting picked up, obviously, teams still need point guards. So right. I became the 21st pick, and that was a real special moment for me and my family.
You betcha. Now, just out of curiosity, is there any chip on the shoulder of like, all right, you guys took these other, 8 point guards in front of me, like, I'm going to go out there and work and prove to you that I should have been in the conversation earlier than where I went?
For sure. I mean, that's just being competitive. I mean, anytime you see a player ahead of you, you have a lot to prove against them.
Absolutely. Once again, good class, but you end up being a great player too. So
thank you.
Yeah, so you get drafted in New Orleans, and once again, you get a phenomenal opportunity to go play with a point guard who's doing the deal in Chris Paul. But in that year, Chris Paul ends up having a fair amount of injuries, and so that gives you a great opportunity to play. So talk a little bit about that transition and learning from Chris, and then having the opportunity to step in and really excel.
Yeah, I mean, CP was just a very instrumental vet, mentor, friend, brother for me in my life, because everything that he did, I mimicked. You know what I'm saying? You hear Kobe do the same thing with Jordan. I did the same thing with CP. And I just saw how great of a leader he was, how great of a player he was. And, obviously you're still trying to be yourself as, your own player. But, just a lot of things that he did from a leadership standpoint that I respected. And I wanted to kind of take that with myself and kind of be my own leader and lead my own team whenever I got the chance and the opportunity. And, when I went to Indiana right after that, that's coming some of the things that I kind of instilled in myself. You know what I mean? I think at the time the team wasn't, I think we didn't make the playoffs for like, I don't know, for like 5-6 seasons
Yeah.
before I got there. And I just remember Larry Bird, he's like, look, man, if we're gonna make the playoffs, it's gonna be a lot because of you. You know what I mean? If we don't make the playoffs, it's gonna be a lot because of you. So from right there on, like I knew what was expected, and I knew how to lead because I've seen how CP did a great job leading us, in New Orleans. And so that I took that with me to Indiana, Dallas, and then all the way to Sacramento too as well before I came back home to the LA Clippers.
Absolutely. So when you're starting in New Orleans, I feel like probably along the way at each stop, high school to college, college to the pros, your game to some degree had to morph, right? And I know you had mentioned that in college, your coaches really highlighted how quick you were. Like, you're like, yeah, I know I'm fast. And they're like, no, you don't realize how fast you are. So talk a little bit about having, coaches see something in you that maybe you don't even recognize how special it is, but they're able to see it from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they used to say was that I didn't always use my speed. You know what I mean? And I could have used my speed a lot more. And in hindsight, yes. And then there was the other part where it was like I knew how to channel speeds from, going fast, sometimes slowing down and knowing when to play fast. So that was that aspect of me learning how to play at that pace too. So with all that being said, it was part of the process, and we were able to, I was able to, come to a common ground of how to play, not just play fast, not just play slow, and knowing when to play and knowing how to change my pace and switch the gears up, when I was playing. And I think that's the biggest thing with youngest players is that we don't know, or I shouldn't say we, but the younger players, they don't know how to, manipulate their speed during the course of a game, right? And
Absolutely.
that was some of the things that was hard for me to learn at the time. But then once you figure it out, you pick it up, I think you're on your way.
Absolutely.
Still, by the way, I got like 2 minutes. Before I go. But yeah.
Cool. So with that transition into the NBA, things are going well. Once again, you recognize that it's a business though. And so you mentioned, hey, you transitioned to a few different teams, but you end up getting to play with the Clippers, being the hometown kid with one of the hometown teams.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about how special that was being, I guess back in the home arena.
Yeah, I mean, it was very special for me. I mean, because how many times do you get a chance to say that you play at home in front of family, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you play in the NBA, you go to so many different cities, and all you care about is just how would it look like if I played at home in an NBA uniform, right? And playing for the Clippers, who were really good at the time, it was a special moment for
me. Absolutely. So in your career, I mean, you've had a lot of phenomenal basketball success, setting the record for I believe most games played at UCLA, in the NBA, making multiple playoff appearances, first team rookie team. And then you decide, hey, it's time for me to retire and exit. So just talk a little bit about what went into that, because that's a tough thing when you spent your whole life developing this skill and this trait, and to say, you know what, now I'm done.
I think for me personally, it got to a point where, family was more important than basketball.
Yeah.
And I played basketball for so long where basketball was number one priority.
Yep.
And that's what helped me to become successful. It helped me to be driven. And, when you have, a son now, you got to think a little bit differently. You got to think about some things that's going to impact him. And for me, I got to a point where I felt like, I can be a better father, a person, if I stepped away. And obviously, my faith needed, some interchanging too as well. So I wanted to kind of rely on my family, my faith at the time. And that's why I kind of step away to kind of do those things, because I felt like I would be a better person if I did it. Now, yes, did I lose millions? Of course I lost millions, and I knew what was at stake, and I lost an opportunity to continue to play, even at a high level during that time. But everything that I gained, from being away from basketball was so much more that people don't see. Was, I spent so much time with my son, going to his games, being a coach, being assistant coach, training him, you know what I mean? Just helping him to navigate through life. Whereas like if I played, I don't think I would be here with him as much. And, helping him with school, volunteering in school, you know what I mean? So like, these are things that I never thought I would envision if I never had stepped away, but I did. And, it was something that, to this day, I don't regret.
Absolutely. Well, Darren, I appreciate your time so much, man. Just getting to highlight the pivotal moments that have led you through your NBA career, your college career, your high school career, and now what you're doing training. But excited to continue to follow your journey and can't wait to have you back on again to just continue to highlight all the amazing things you'll continue to do.
Yeah, Phil, I appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure, to work with good people like you and to have some good interviews. You got to come out to the training facility at Pros Vision in Irvine, man. There's a lot of good players that's coming through there, and a lot of NBA players have made their mark there. So, we're just missing you. You know what I mean? So we need to.
I'm coming out. I'm coming out, bro. It's happening.
No, it's all good. Anytime, though.
My man.